Hey everyone, welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. You can find me on the socials at Emily247. My guest tonight is the newest of the Transvengers. Her handle is ItsEmily247. Emily is a senior media tech from the Boston area. You can see her every Thursday night on the Transvengers show on Twitch, as well as on her YouTube page. It's Emily, a 30-something Translife. Welcome to the show. It's Emily, 24/7. Hi, Emily.
Glad to be here. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for coming on. I just found out before the show started that Emily is doing this blind. She has not seen an episode of this show, so thank you so much for being willing to come on unrehearsed completely.
Of course. I'm good. Always up for a rousing good time.
Well, let's hope it is. Let's hope it is. We'll definitely have the fun at the end, if nothing else. Let's get into your story and your background. When did you first realize that you were trans? Well, actually, sorry, I rephrased that wrong. When did you first realize you were different, and what were those initial clues? Okay.
So if I really think about it, it goes back to about 3rd or 4th grade. I mean, honestly, like the highlight of coming home would be to try on my sister's clothes. And like, if I'm completely honest, like hours, pretty much the whole time from like probably till dinner was ready. When I got home certain days, I would just rush home, put on makeup, put on a dress, and I'd feel good and I'd feel me. And then I do that kind of stuff a lot. And then like high school, I felt like I kind of sheltered it. You kind of hide it. Because I felt like, okay, no, hide it. And then, college, I started experimenting more, coming out with it more. And then again, hiding it again. And then, it's all different layers and steps, at least in my experience, what I've gone through. So from here, then I just, I kind of knew I was trans from such a early age.
Wow. So was your family in on it? Were your sisters participating?
No.
Like making up?
No,
was
they
it
had no idea.
No, okay. So it was closeted, it was secretive.
Yes.
Okay. And you never got caught, huh? Even with putting on makeup and everything?
Oh no, I was good. I was sneaky. I never got caught.
Very nice. Did you have the terrifying like driveway noise kind of moments?
Oh, I've had the knock on the door, and you're like, I'm just busy, okay? Like,
sorry, I need my privacy. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you knew pretty early. When did you realize it was that you were trans and not something else?
That took a lot of self-acceptance. For a while, I kind of knew from probably from college or beginning of college on, I knew that I was trans, but I never accepted it. So it was more like I knew what I was, but I didn't want to touch it. I was like, no, no, I'm not trans. It's, it could be this, it could be that, it could be something that, doesn't have anything to do with this, and it'll go away. And that honestly kept going and going for a while until basically I moved here to Boston with my roommate who ended up being female to male and opened up to me, and I opened up to him, and we talked, and we kind of went through the process together. We kind of just said, okay, we're not going to do anything, but let's just say this is our safe space, like the apartment. And then okay, cool. And then we would trade clothes, and we would do other stuff. He'd be like, oh, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this prom dress. You take it. I'm like, cool, awesome. I'm like, here, take this. Oh, cool, awesome. So it was just kind of like a trade back and forth. We had a good friendship. We still do, and we still talk. And, and from there, we kind of just, we moved forward in our transition. I started going to therapy. And when I started therapy, honestly, 4 years later, I'm here right now. So it's 4.5 years later, 4.5, 4, 5, I don't know, somewhere around there. I'm here now. And it kind of took out a bullet out of a gun after I started therapy. So, it just kind of went from there.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of wonderful that you knew at such an early age and then had that wonderful experience of being able to explore it with that other person and share it, and especially being able to trade clothes. I love that. Then you've got this built-in wardrobe. You guys had the similar sizes?
Around, yeah, around the same sizes. Some things were different, but like we were around the same size for like actual clothing. So like it was kind of like, it was nice that, like, you know, he obviously didn't want his female clothes, and I didn't want really a lot of my male clothes at certain points. Like but he liked them, so like we could just switch back and forth, and you know, it was a good experience, and it just, I think it helped both of us out. And I don't think if it was for that, I would have got in as far as I did, honestly. So to start with, and as quick as I did.
Mm-hmm. My next question would be, who did you first come out to? So I think we've answered that. But outside of him, who did you first come out to, and how did you do that?
Well, here's the thing. He actually wasn't the first one I came out to. There was times before this where I came out to people and it didn't go as well as I thought. So if I think way back to the first person I ever came out to, I was a senior in high school, or a freshman in college, senior in high school. And I was 17 or 18, and my girlfriend at the time was 16. And I came out to her. I kind of just said, hey, you know, I gotta be honest with you, I think I'm a girl. And then she just kind of like broke down crying. So it wasn't the best experience the first time, and I think that's what kind of stopped me from moving forward with it at that point.
Yeah.
Because I had gotten such a bad reaction when that first happened that I was kind of like, nope, I'm good. I'm gonna stop now. And then over the years, I'd slowly, like, on Facebook, never face to face anymore. That was like the last face to face till I was like out. I would start like messaging people on Facebook Messenger, say, hey, so what would be like if, you know, I'm, you know, a girl or trans, and like, and, stuff like that. And then, so people would slowly start learning it and know, even though I didn't do anything yet. I was like, look, I'm just not comfortable doing it yet. I don't know about this about myself yet. I can say it to you, but I can't say it to me. I was like, so like, it's almost like I can say it to you, but I'm not saying it to me yet, because I'm still freaking out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, from there, it just went slowly to more people. And then, then I got to the roommate situation from there. And then, I kind of just went about telling people when I actually decided to transition.
Hmm. Who was the hardest person for you to come out to?
My dad. My dad was probably the hardest. He was the hardest person to come out to, and he took it the best, which was great. For when it came to my parents, I basically wrote them an email. I think if anybody watches Transvengers, I think I've said this before. I said this on there. I wrote an email, basically just saying, "Hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I've been. This has been a long time. Blah blah blah. I'm still me. I still love Disney. I still love Doctor Who. I still love all this other stuff. I'll still go to Comic-Con. I'll still, do all me stuff." But I decided to write an email because I felt like there's no way. I wanted to get everything out without being interrupted. I didn't want I didn't want to start explaining it, and as soon as I hit trans and not finish the rest, they go, hey, wait a minute. I wanted them to read it fully. I wanted them to read every word, think about it, and then email me back. It was probably the best thing I did, and the hardest thing, because waiting for that reply was torture.
I can imagine,
but
yeah.
I did get a reply from my dad, and he was like, look, we're still going to talk. We still have conversations. You're still my child. I love you. There's nothing, if this is who you need to be, this is who you are, and, that's it. And, just call me when you're ready. So, and that was it. And that's kind of how it happened. And so it worked much better for at least my situation than I was thinking it would. And, I'm happy with that. And I still have a really good relationship with my dad. So he calls me at least 3 times a week. So like,
That's great. And how is your family with gendering, pronouns and the correct name?
It was hard at first. My mom would make mistakes sometimes, it's, it was almost inevitable, especially on the phone. She'd hear me talking on the phone, and she'd say it. After a while, she didn't do it in person as much as she did it on the phone. And then there'd be times where, you know, she wouldn't go from, basically she'd be going from, you know, if she would be telling a story about me, she'd use my old name and pronouns and then be like, oh, but that's who. I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. That's who I never was. Do not do that. Like, that just, you know, you're basically outing me to whoever you're talking to. And after a while, she's understood that. There hasn't, honestly, it's probably been, I don't know, probably a year since she's made that mistake, which is pretty good. Because it's about, she's known for about 5 years. So, like, took her about 4 years to actually, like, you know, hit the hammer on the nail on the hammer kind of thing. But I think other than that, yeah, I mean, my grandmother will do it still. I mean, she's almost 80 years old. So, I mean, sometimes it's hard. But, you know, she does it, but then she'll stop and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't mean that. And, you know, I know, you know, she means well. So, I mean, I'm not going to bash an 80-year-old woman for, like, messing up once in a great while. So, I mean, I still try to say, oh, no, thanks, I appreciate it. But, yeah, you're right. Like, she's like, no, I know. And then she will only do it on the phone, too. She will not do it in person. So, yeah, they've been really good. They've been pretty good about it. So,
well, that's awesome.
Pronouns took a while, but, you know, after a while, it did stick.
Had you, so I haven't really pushed that yet with my family, still trying to let them get used to the idea. Where were you at with hormones in this? Had you already been taking hormones when you started to really push for the she her pronouns and the name?
Yes, when I started, because actually one of the things in my dad's email, he was completely honest. He was like, look, it might take me a while to get used to using the correct name and pronouns, but I will get it. I kind of waited until I was on hormones, and then when I was going to start presenting and be fully 100% out for me to actually like be like, hey, can you please use this? Just because I didn't want to make things confusing for them, for myself, because if I wasn't out at work yet, because there was a time, it was about a good 6-month period between not between hormones, but between coming out to them and going full-time at work, which meant full-time at work basically meant full-time to me, because that was the only place I wasn't myself. That I was kind of going back and forth. So, like, you know, they wanted to tell the other family on their own accord, like in a month. And I was like, okay, fine. You know, unfortunately, my grandmother, who I was very close with, died before she found out. And that kind of killed me a little bit. And I kind of rushed the process after that. And the next week they decided to tell people because of what happened. And for me, at least. And then at that point, you know, people knew, and people were still like, my uncle, I remember, my uncle found out when we were at my grandmother's funeral, and he had known because my dad had told them and my mom had told them because of what happened to my grandmother. And, you know, I know people were going to ask because my hair, I think, was down to like here at that point. So people were going to ask, obviously, like, you know, because I've never had long hair in my life until that moment. And basically, you know, my uncle hugged me and he's like, it's really good to see you. But he said it really softly under his voice, like in my ear, Emily. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. And then, like, you know, he was really good about it. And then, you know, from there, you know, people learned. And then when I came out at work, it was the time I was like, look, you know, I understand you're making mistakes, but can we please, you know, I'm 100%, you know, out now. This is how I'm living life every single day. So, and then at that point, you know, that's when I started to put across that, like, you know, if you made a mistake, I was like, can you please not do that? Like, stuff like that. So.
Did you have anybody either in your family or outside, like at work or whatever, that supported you that you weren't expecting, other than your dad, obviously?
I wouldn't say I wasn't expecting my dad to support me. I was just very scared about it. I thought maybe he would have, but it would have been maybe a little harder. You know what? I'm not sure. Probably, there's a couple male friends that I had that I honestly wasn't even thinking about telling, because I was kind of like, okay, I don't know how it's gonna go, because this is a male friend who it's like, it's a male friend. Like, it's like, you know, we have a certain friendship. And like I was a little worried about that, and honestly it was fine. It was, it was like, hey, they actually, one of them actually two of them I never told, because we just kind of lost track before then anyway of each other. And they found me on Facebook and they messaged me, hey, you look great, it seems like you're doing well, something I wouldn't have expected, but I wish you told me, you seem like you're doing great. And and it was, it was more of a surprise that, and other than that though, no, everybody kind of reacted the same way, whether it was for or against. So
okay. Pretty in line with what you expected is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was funny. I had some people in extended family that I was afraid to tell, or some other people, and some of them have reached out, same sort of situation, and it's kind of wonderful when you get those, hey, you look great, and I'm so proud of you, you're doing this stuff, and you're like, wow, I wasn't even sure I would have wanted you to know, because like of the particular relationship we had. And sometimes you just don't want that to change. You don't want to sour that. And I guess we still just have these fears of, I don't know, ruining things with people. That's silly.
Yeah.
So when did you first find community? When did you first find a full-on support group other than that one roommate?
Honestly, it was through that one roommate. My roommate was friends with my now best friend, Allie, who, is just, she's not LGBT, she's cis straight. So like, she was friends with him, and she would come over for New Year's, and we met and we talked, and, we met as before I transitioned. And then, I kind of opened up to her, we talked, and then, slowly she took me out shopping one day. We hung out, I was super scared of my life, like staring at the ground, like, no, look at me, I'm not looking at anybody. Trying to do this for the first time. And she was really supportive, and, she'd come over, we'd help out. And since then we do everything together. It's actually, today's her birthday. I just called her actually a little while ago. But yeah, like, since then we literally became best friends, attached to the hip. There was, before we had significant others, we'd basically be over each other's places like 3 times a week, like hanging out. Or she'd call me whenever a boy would dump her. I'm like, all right, I'm coming with the ice cream, here I come. It's like, 2 years ago now. It's like, all right, like, let's go. And she's like, okay, thanks, Emily. I'm like, we just developed a really strong bond and became best friends. And that got me through a lot of stuff, was having her, and then having my roommate. And then, I had my old group of friends I used to hang out with anyway. And then, from there, I kind of just developed, a little friendship group. One of my friends from college and high school moved to Boston area, and she would hang out with us, and she still does. And she's very accepting, and she's one of the people who knew before anybody else as well. So she would, like, back in high school, we'd go try on prom dresses together. You know what I mean? So she knew. And so this was a big thing for her, because she was excited that it finally happened. And, so we have a little group we formed from there. So.
And when did you get into online community? Like the trans community online and that kind of stuff?
I got into online community completely by accident. So basically what happened was, around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. one night, I was doing laundry, and I was like, you know what? I'll just post a timeline video of my 6 months on HRT on YouTube. And so I just went, okay, sure. And I just posted it. And then I come back like the next day, and it has like 5,000 views. And I'm like, whoa, okay, cool. So then, I just kept posting videos. I did like a little intro video, and then I just, talked about what happened this day. And then I'm like, okay, well, I came out to this person. I'm gonna do a video on it. And then I would do a video every week. And then I saw people were watching. And then, one of my earliest fans, if any of you watch Transvengers, was Mika. So like, that's how I met her, because she had messaged me as a viewer and a fan of my channel. And, she'd message me, and these other people would message me, and I just talked to them. And, sometimes I'd get a message from someone else, or like, I'd just keep posting videos about my name change, about how I did it, about how I did all my birth certificate documents, how I did like all these other stuff. And people seem to appreciate it. And honestly, looking at it now, when I was looking for somebody to watch on YouTube, I felt like there was nobody who, at least 5 years ago now, there was nobody I identified with who was like just like average everyday, like, hey, this is happening, or like, hey, whatever's happening during the day. It was all I would find would be like, oh, they didn't know I was trans, chat with boy or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I felt like I wanted to do something that was more just the average person or trans girl, or like the everyday, normal regular trans girl who's just transitioning and wants to know about stuff. So like I started doing it, and since then it's been 5 years, and since then I got on Instagram and I met everybody on Instagram, and then I met Mika, and then I met some other Samantha and Ari and everybody else, and from there we just became friends, and yeah, from there kind of took off. And then I just started, all of a sudden I'm on social media one day, so
stumbled right into it.
Kind of did, yeah. It was completely by accident. So, Lexi, who just said laundry at 2 a.m., by the way, I just need to comment on that. I miss having that much energy too, because that was like 5 years ago now. So,
how far along would you say you're in your journey? And I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, like just starting out, completely done. Where do you think you are
at this moment?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's always things I feel like we could nitpick about ourselves that we want to work on. I think that's not even being trans. That's just part of being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about it, obviously I want to go back to my voice lessons. I kind of stopped those for a while. With COVID and everything else happening, I was trying to do some voice lessons. I don't think I'd ever get surgery. I think I'm done with surgeries. I've had my bottom surgery as well as my top surgery. I don't feel like I want anything further for myself, at least. And then, just, as every trans woman knows and goes through, more and more electrolysis and facial hair removal. But I mean, which will keep going for probably a while. But after that, I mean, I think I'm light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. Like I'm kind of like, there's not much major I want to do besides like maybe learning things with my voice, or just going to those annoying electrolysis and laser sessions. So
oh, the joys. Do you see, with the light at the end of the tunnel, do you see a change in your social media presence coming? Or would you take a step back from any of that?
No, I mean, honestly, I have taken a step back from YouTube. I did a video recently this week, but that was the first video I'd done in 6 months. I think there was a time where like I just was kind of, when you basically get to a certain point, sometimes it's harder, especially when you first start out. When I was first starting out, I felt I had endless things to say on YouTube because I was doing something new every single week in my transition because there was so much happening. And after a while, I noticed that I just started living. And that's what it's all about. So like, I wasn't doing this endless stuff anymore. I'd still do enough where I could do one every other week or so. And then I started posting some stuff that maybe wasn't trans related as much. And then, I still want to post. I still want a social media presence. I don't think I'd step back as much. I feel like I've already stepped back from like what I was over, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I was first transitioning. But I think I would still maintain some kind of presence based on the community and based on people I know and based on, what I do usually, during the day and who I interact with. So, I mean, I feel it's all basically comes together in that way.
How long, a question from the chat, how long did it take for your hair to grow out?
That's a good question. When I first started to grow my hair out, to get about probably up to maybe my ears or below my ears, just below my ears, took about a year. I started with a shaved head, obviously, so that's why it took a while. Past that, I just, based on some shampoos I use a shampoo that has biotin in it. I use a couple of things like that. It took three or so years maybe to get this length. This is the longest I think I've actually ever had it. So this would probably be, but I've also cut it a couple times to be about shoulder length. So I would say overall probably about 2.5, 3 years to fully grow out my hair, like fully grow it out because you should always, when you're growing out your hair, you should always get regular trims because, I mean, yes, it shortens it, but it's going to make the hair better in quality as you're going, and it's going to make it so it's easier to do, and it grows better and it grows faster that way if you do trims, just an inch or so, half an inch even, and it just makes the process better overall and makes your hair better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I mean, it seems like it's the opposite of what you want to do. It's actually what you want to do.
What were some of the big fears that you ran up against in your transition, and how did you overcome those?
Big fears. There was quite a few. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest fear for anybody is just coming out. Just telling people and just doing it and just coming out. That was probably the biggest. I mean, I say I sent an email, but it wasn't that easy. I wrote it, rewrote it, and then sat there with my hand on the mouse for the send button for like 2 hours straight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know that's a big thing to overcome. And you just get so scared of. I would almost say it's being scared of the unknown, because you, as much as you feel like you know, and you probably do know, like I knew, you probably do know, but you still get that fear that maybe you don't know, like how things are going to come out,
Mm-hmm.
how things are going to happen. So it gives you that fear of, you know, what am I doing? What will I lose?
Yeah.
When in the end, what you lose, as far as my experience has been, has shown me, is what I lost is nowhere near what I've gained. So in the end, you got to look at it that way too.
And was that the same thing that you would say with the physical aspects as well, like GCS?
For confirmation surgery, there was fear there for a while. There was a lot of fear. I mean, there still is. I mean, I'm healing. You know, I had it done in December, so I'm still kind of fresh out of it a little bit. It definitely takes time to heal, and you know, I've had my own set of complications, which I'm actually doing a video on this week, and it's Emily. So, talking about those kind of issues I've been having with my dilation and stuff, because it's a process. It takes work. It takes, you know, time to you know, you have something fresh. You have to learn yourself again. You have to do that kind of stuff. So they're still there. When thinking about fear beforehand, though, I wouldn't say that the fear was like, oh, do I really want this kind of fear? That was never my fear. I think it was more fear of like, oh my God, this is a major surgery, and like you're literally cutting me up. Like, and I'm like, I have to get like an epidural, like in my back, a huge needle, and like I have to, like, I think it was more fears of the actual appointment and the process of how strenuous and exhausting the healing was going to be in that setting than getting the surgery itself.
Do you think that the therapy that you had was a major contributing factor to that? Is that why it was easy for you? You didn't feel any fears of making a mistake or regretting it?
I talked about that with my therapist sometimes, and you know, there was times I was a little scared. I was like, look, I'm just scared of the surgery. And for me, I think for me personally, it was all about just being scared for the surgery, not scared for the actual, like, you know, what it's going to give me. Because I think for myself, I always knew that I was happy with what it was going to give me based on what I already had. It was it was a mixed bag. So we talk about it, and usually, honestly, that would be the first thing she would bring up, because she would be like, you know, hey, you know, is it scared because you don't know if you want it? And I'd have to say every time, like, no, it's not that I don't want it. I'm just scared of the process in general, because, you know, I don't want to do something that's going to, you know, physically harm me or cost me my life or something. But then, you know, we talk more, and I'd be like, well, honestly, if you don't have it, is it going to do anything different? I'm like, no, probably not. So, like, you know, this is something I know I needed, and know I'm personally wanted. Obviously, not every trans woman and every trans person needs surgery. So, like, for myself, though, I felt like this was something that I needed to do. So it was definitely never in the back of my mind that I didn't want it. So.
Do you have moments these days where you feel dysphoric? Does anything cause that? You mentioned the voice. Is it other?
The voice definitely does it. I mean, I can be completely honest. My voice, my shoulders. Sometimes those certain things, like my shoulder, I have actually kind of wider shoulders, so sometimes those kind of do it to me. It honestly, the biggest thing I would say, yeah, it's my voice and my shoulders. But those are probably the two things that only give me dysphoria. I don't have dysphoria down below anymore. I don't have dysphoria about my chest. I don't have dysphoria about anything else. Usually my voice is what does it, and it even makes me sometimes not want to speak sometimes because I get worried in public or on the phone or something like that, you know, what are people going to think of my voice? Like, I don't want to. And then if I really think about it, sometimes I'll just be quiet or let my fiance, like, you know, speak for me or do something, or, you know, be the one to say, oh, table for two, you know, or something like little like that. So.
What were some of the biggest learning curves or things that you've had to get used to in the transition?
I mean, there's a lot of learning curves. Honestly, one of them would be unwanted touching in the workplace and unwanted touching in general from men and male counterparts. When I first came out, this kind of surprised me. I was fortunate enough when I came out, actually, that I had looked, you know, we basically, the way my school works, when we, you know, break for Christmas, we don't come back till like mid-January for my job. We have that time paid off. So basically, you know, I took that time to basically come out before then. You know, they took care of that. They came back a week before I did. They talked about it with everybody who was pertinent to talk to about, like my fellow coworkers. And then I came back as me, as Emily. So, and that was great. But I was fortunate enough where apparently when I came back and when I fully, you know, I wasn't presenting as male, I was presenting as female, that some people didn't recognize me or even notice that and thought I was somebody new. A professor actually came up to me and said, oh, you know, there's a guy I used to work in his office. Did they let him go? Or like...
That's got to feel validating. That's got to feel extremely validating.
Yeah, it did. And that was like some of my first experiences at my workplace. And then, you know, having someone... I don't know if you know her. Andrea Kramer was a professor where I worked. She is a sports journalist and sports person who does a lot of work for NFL and ESPN and stuff like that. And she actually personally came to my office to, you know, tell me that, you know, she was happy for me and like heard about it, and like and that was really great, seeing someone so big as a woman in the media and sports to like actually come up and talk to me. But I'm getting off track. What was your original question?
Just the unexpected things in the transition. Yeah. So you know, you're just hitting on the big thing of
unwanted touching.
Yeah, how women are treated in general.
So like, you know, those were all great experiences. But then with that, when some people didn't recognize me, like I was saying, came with, you know, people. I'm in the tech field, and some people like who didn't know me before or did recognize before, just kind of didn't accept my knowledge as they used to. And they'd also, you know, oh, thank you. And there'd be like a soft pat or a touch. And that would never happen before. And it would be clear to me, because this had never happened to me before. Like, why are you touching me for doing that? I don't think you deserve to touch me for that. But okay, like, am I getting a pat on the back? What's going on? You're touching my shoulder or you're touching my hand. And that was just very unexpected to me. And then when I talked to my cis female friends about it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that like happens all the time. And I'd be like, but we don't, like, one of them was like, I don't even really notice it anymore because it's been since, you know, as something unusual, because it's been since I was like, you know, forever. And, you know, for me, I was like, well, you know, I did. And they're like, well, that's kind of crazy to me. And like, they thought about it, like, well, you've never had that. So all of a sudden you're experiencing it now. And then you're seeing every single example of it. So that was something that I didn't expect and something that I didn't see coming.
How do you feel that the transition has affected your mental health?
Mental health? Great. Honestly, I used to be very shy. I used to be very quiet. I would never want pictures of myself taken. I would never basically be social. I felt like I was either living through a fandom or I was living through my friends. So basically, I'd be like that person that would just say, would be the nice, friendly person and help everybody out and basically be there for everybody else but myself. And then I'd also be like almost living on the outside and living in other people's worlds. Or if I dated someone, I'd just be a part of their world, not mine. I would never put myself first. And basically that changed once I transitioned and once I felt more comfortable with who I was. And then I started gaining more confidence and I started gaining more of like, you know, just like being happy with myself and who I was and actually happy with the person I was showing people and telling people. And I could have friendships based on genuine, you know, I like you, you like me, like we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was basically I was now a part of their lives and they were a part of my lives and I wasn't just in the background.
That's a wonderful shift. The finding the self-importance and the reason to
Yep.
actually partake. I love that. How did you choose your name?
I went through a lot of names. There was a lot of names I went through at first. There was, I think there was Sarah, Ashley, Kim. There was a bunch. And then honestly, not joking, the way it happened was for Emily, the name I was trying out and going by when I was actually thinking of transitioning was Emily, because I was trying Emily. And honestly, it just stuck. So like I was like, okay, I like Emily, it's cool. So like I just kind of went with it and it just kind of stuck and I was like, okay, cool. And I was on my beginning route of transition and I just stuck with it.
So you tried out other names. How did you do that?
Just through with either people I was dating who knew or people who like were friends who knew and like I'd be like, all right, let's try this. You call me this. Let's you know, how do you feel about that? I was like, I don't know. And then like, you know, just, you know, they would just keep calling me, you know, they would switch it whenever I asked. I like my friends were really good about it and I appreciated that. And like, especially the ones I hadn't really talked to, who I'd just be talking to on Facebook about it. And, you know, just after a while I would see, you know, how it felt. And then, you know, and honestly that by the end of it, when I was on Emily, I was like, yeah, I like Emily. It's cool. And then, what I ended up doing though for my middle name was my mom was having a hard time still with everything when I first came out and accepting it. So I actually gave her the choice of choosing my middle name.
Wow.
And that made her, because it made her feel better about it. It made her feel like she was still naming me.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that was a good way. And honestly, after I did that, that helped a lot with her acceptance.
Wow.
So like just knowing that she had a hand and I wasn't just throwing away what, you know, she had called me, like she was actually like participating. And I felt that was a good move. And then honestly, she ended up picking her own name, Rose. So like my middle name is Emily Rose Allen.
Mm.
So
what advice do you have for young or closeted trans people?
I mean, in the end, you got to do what's best for you. I know it's hard to think about the way other people are going to react and the way other people are going to think, but what's waiting for you on the other side is amazing. And just the feeling, it doesn't, I mean, I've had some family members who don't accept me. I've had family members who do accept me. I've had friends who don't accept me. I've had friends who do accept me. The ones who accept you, my relationship with them increased 100-fold because I was who I am now. You have to keep going forward. You have to think about you, just like I didn't think about myself for once. You have to think about you and what's going to make you the happier person and make your life worth living in the end, because it's your life, not theirs. And I think going forward, I know it's going to be scary, but you just keep your head up high and you keep going forward and you'll get there.
Get into the audience questions and then we'll get to the last one that I have. Someone said that they were caught and thrown out of their parents' house when they were, trying on other clothes, when they were discovering themselves. Do you have any stealth tips for closeted trans people on how they can dress without getting caught by spouses and family?
Not really. It's kind of tough for me, at least, because when I did it, I was in 4th grade. So for me, it was just, it could just be, oh, my sister did that. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. I feel bad because I probably got her in trouble so many times for like having clothes under the bathroom sink or something. So many times. I'm not sure. It's a little tough. I used to, honestly, when I was dating people, though, like before this, in after college and stuff, I used to keep everything in a trash bag. I used to try to be very stealthy about it, but I was never like living with anybody for a long time until I met Juliana, and then before that, like, I was very just myself. So it was kind of like I've never had that experience because I've never been married or had kids or anything like that. So like for me, it's always been a little easier because I was just me. So like on my own. So
yeah, I did I didn't have a trash bag. I did a duffel bag, but it was easy for me because at that point it was just panties. That was all I had, and then eventually some bras. But for the most part, it was easy to keep in a reasonable sized duffel bag and keep that tucked deep in the closet. Who was the first trans person that you learned about, and was sort of a role model for you?
My aunt came out as trans when I was 12. In many ways, she got everybody ready for me to come out, and I've always appreciated that about her because she took a lot of brunt of some stuff that I didn't have to deal with, especially when it came to my dad and other people, like about learning it and learning about it came from her. Obviously, there was pros and cons to it, because there was pros because I looked up to her a little bit, but like going like, wow, she did this, and she didn't just do it, she did it like in the 90s, like during a time where it wasn't as accepted.
Yeah.
And she helped basically take the brunt from my family. But also there was the negative where I had to hear everything negative that was being said by certain people in the family who didn't think it was, a big deal to make fun of my aunt, and like because they were trans. So like, which almost pushed me back from transitioning a little bit too, because you get scared, like I don't want that to be me. So it's it was goods, and it was things that were good, and now I recognize things that I know she probably doesn't even realize it, but I think she took a lot of the initial impact of me coming out as trans way back then.
So did you get a chance to talk to her and ask her any questions as you were considering coming out? Did you get to use her as a soundboard?
I met with her, and I told her, I was like, hey, and she's like, hey, so what's up? And I was like, think I'm trans. And she was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, oh. And then, and I understood where she was coming from. And she was like, how long, what are you thinking about doing? Have you told anybody? I was like, no. And then, obviously, people have their own thoughts in their heads. And, one of the things was she was like, oh my God, they're going to blame me. They're going to think I did this. And I'm like, I get it. Like, but, at the same time, no, like, but I understand where the thought came from. Like, cause at the same time, she took so much that to think that, something else is going to come at her because, someone else in the family is coming out as trans. It's, it's a tough situation, but we talked, and, she also had surgery. So I talked to her a lot before surgery, especially, before coming to do it. And, we've had a relationship, and, she has a relationship with my dad and everybody else. And, it's nice. And, we've gone through some of the same things. So it's nice sometimes to talk to each other, and she understands kind of some of the stuff I'm going through. And then, sometimes, I'll be like, oh, she's like, how are you paying for surgery? I was like, oh, insurance is covered. She's like, what? Because, she had her surgery way back in the 90s when that was not even a thing. So, and she went to, Southeast Asia. So, there's definitely some gaps there, but there's definitely some commonality, which is nice to have and to see sometimes, especially when you're doing family stuff. So,
yeah. Parts of a question from before. How does it feel to be a leader and a role model for thousands of young women across the world? And adding on to that, what sort of things have come of that?
It's hard for me sometimes to think of myself in that way, because when I'm doing it, I'm just me. No, and I get that, and honestly, it means a lot. Like, every time I get a message from somebody that says, like, oh my God, thank you, like, your video helped me, or even like, oh, I love your content, thanks a lot, this helped me in this place, it means a lot. And honestly, I feel like I'm being completely sincere when I say this. I don't feel like I'm just helping other people. I feel like everybody is helping me as well. People telling me this gives me the confidence as well in myself. I feel like it's both sides here. I love everybody, and I love the way people react to my videos. I love that it helps people, and just hearing that it helps people makes me feel better. And then I feel like I want to give more, and I feel like that's what it is. And I feel like I've been helped more than I could have possibly ever helped anybody else, honestly.
In some cases, do you think that holding off on your transition until you move out of your parents' house is the best thing to do, even for your mental health?
If you fear for your safety, yes. I would say if you fear for your safety, yes. Of course, your safety and your well-being should be first and foremost. If you feel for your safety and well-being that much, if you said anything, something bad would happen, I feel like you should get out of that situation as fast as possible. However, I never feel like it is good to withhold yourself. I feel like it drains you. I felt like every day or every passing day that happened where I withheld who I was drained me emotionally and mentally. I just didn't want to get out of bed. I was always late to work. I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to stay home and watch my TV shows or play video games. It was just draining to me to be in society. Now I'm the opposite. Now I am begging to go out whenever I can. I want to throw on a Disney dress and just go out to do something and to have some fun. And I think when you withheld something so big a part of yourself for so long and you keep withholding it, it's going to literally kill you from the inside out until there's nothing left. It's never good to hold in. I understand some situations call for it. Like I said, if you feel like your life would literally be in danger or you would put yourself in danger by saying it, then you can hold off until you get into that safer situation. But if you don't think that's the case and it's just you're kind of scared of what could happen or what the reaction will be, more based on yelling, stuff like that, and because we all had parents, it's never good to withhold yourself, because you're almost beating yourself up more by not saying anything than you would be by saying something.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, obviously.
And, you mentioned it, and we've heard it a couple of times on this show, that a lot of times our radar can be fairly accurate. Like, we sort of know who is likely going to support and who isn't, and then also kind of their level of reaction. So if you know their level of reaction is going to be really negative, or they're if you're really genuinely afraid, if not for violence, but they're going to throw you out of their house, then just make sure you take the steps slowly first to build up your network, find someone to talk to, find a group, find some support, and then weigh that. If you have the support group, if you have somebody that says, well, if they kick you out, you can totally stay with us. If you have that kind of, network behind you, then maybe go forward with your decision. But just weigh all that stuff first, and just like I said, make sure you have your network behind you as much as you can before you do some of those scarier things, so that just in case, if worst case scenario does happen, you have someone you can call that can come pick you up, you have somewhere you can land, those sort of things. All right, I think that does it for any of the kind of scary questions. One just popped in. Let's see. Okay, so a follow-up on that. On the other side, so once you have come out, do you have any tips for coming out and living openly without fear or anxiety? How do you get rid of the fear and anxiety? That's a big one that I need to learn.
That is a big one. Fear and anxiety, I mean, that hit me before I even first came out, which was I basically just going out shopping for the first time. I had tons of fear and anxiety, and honestly, it clicks back to the network. Having a group of friends, no matter how small, or somebody that can back you up and lift you up during it will mean the world. Because at first, everybody is scared. I mean, honestly, it's just how it is. It's a scary thing. You always think every single person is looking at you on the street, even though they're not. Sometimes and honestly, you never really get completely over it. I sometimes still feel like sometimes I was like, is that person looking at me because they know I'm trans? Like, I still do it. And like, it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more you go out, the more you build your confidence in yourself, the less it'll affect you. It will never stop affecting you, but you won't pay as much attention to it. Mm-hmm. It's like the best advice I can give you on that. Everybody feels it. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do. I feel it. I know some of the other transvengers have felt it. We've talked about it. I know, everybody feels it and will continue to feel it. And it's just whether or not you let it overtake you and control you, or you let it go past and you do have more confidence than you do the anxiety.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. And I've gotten my hair, since I grew my hair out, I've gotten it cut once. So I'm not good about that yet. And then, this year it's obviously out the window, but I hope to get into doing that too, because now it's just too long. It's really kind of unwieldy. Every 3 months, you should get your hair trimmed, says Madison in the chat. All right. Well, like I said, I'm pretty much out of questions. We've run through Disney, we've run through Transvengers, and we've definitely run through your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you for being willing to come on. Like I said, blind, not knowing the show.
Of course. It's a great time. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Any passing last words, any other words of advice you'd like to give trans people on our way out?
Be you, be proud, be happy. That's it. That's all I can really say to you guys. In the end, it's your journey, not anybody else's. And you do what's best for you. And you're the one who knows that. So,
great advice. Again, thank you so much for coming on, Emily, and we'll see you on Thursday nights on the Transvengers.
Actually, I will be on Transvengers tomorrow night as well for Wicked Wednesdays with It's Emily. So right. You guys can catch me there first.
Good plug. All right, have a great night.
Thanks.